Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from Powersonic. We are here on another SIGENERGY install. This one's a bit different to anything we've shared on the channel before, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But first up, if you're a customer who's looking for solar PV, battery storage, EV charge points in your home, there'll be a link in the description wherever you're watching this to go off and get in touch with us. We are working all over the UK, picking up some really challenging installations, and we're absolutely loving it. So please do get in touch with us. And a huge thank you to our customers on this project who have looked after us so well. It is very much appreciated, and we hope you are happy with the system we're handing over to you. This is going to serve you very well for many, many years to come. We're going to dive in a bit closer and go through exactly what we've got and why this is set up in the way it is. It is a bit of a beast. We can start as always at the beginning, and this is our backup gateway. You will note all the lights on the front of this are illuminated, and that is because we are utilising the smart port to integrate some existing feed-in tariff solar PV systems, and we have got our two inverters running through the inverter ports in here as well, and our grid is connected. Now you can turn these lights off. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute, but they do give an illumination of what is going on presently. You can see all of our phases are correct and all of our output voltages are correct to where we need them. Inside our gateway, this is where it's a little bit different to the single phase ones we've showed on the channel before. There are only two ports for our inverters to be connected into this system, and that's due to the rating of this gateway. There are some other options in the three-phase range, so you can have different configurations, and it's important that you match up what you need with the gateway in question. And you can see here we have got a very, very similar layout with one unique difference, and that is the bypass MCB. So of the past, if your gateway developed a fault with a contactor or such, your options were pretty limited in terms of restoring a mechanical connection back to the grid. Now SIGENERGY are integrating these bypass switches, much like Give Energy, and if there is a problem, you can bypass the entire system by operating this MCB. And there is some instructions on the front cover there with how you do it. Otherwise, we have our grid input, which again is bringing our three phases and neutral through this breaker here. Then goes into all the smart electronics and through the two contactors to distribute that grid power and also send power back from the grid from your equipment that's in use. We've got our two inverter ports here. These are both C63 rated, and therefore our two 25 kilowatt inverters. We've also got the backup output port here, and due to the existing configuration of this installation, we've had to do some different approaches in what we would normally do, and we'll get to that in a minute as we walk through the rest of the system. We've also got our smart port up here. Now you can use this for backup generators, heat pumps, EV chargers, or in our case, we've gone down to a little sub-distribution board to wire in the single phase three feed-in tariff inverters back into this system, basically one per phase. At the top of this gateway, we have our SPD, and that is normally down at the bottom on the single phase, but they've popped it up here on the top, and you can see there's also this light switch. So if you don't want the lights on, you can turn them off, and they will be gone forever. However, I think they're quite useful, so we always leave them on. There is the two contactors in here. Because they're both currently held in, that is almost silent. I'll bring you in closer with a microphone so you can listen. I cannot hear a thing on that one. So SIGENERGY have got the new range of gateways rolling into the UK market at the minute, which has resolved the issue of the buzzing contactors, and they are now absolutely silent. So that change is another good step, and that's SIGENERGY listening to feedback from consumers and also the installers alike. Otherwise, this gateway is much as you'll be familiar with on the channel with the single phase systems we've shared. You've got your latch on the side, your entry points all on the bottom. The only other subtle difference, and again I think it's a good one, is how it mounts to the wall. It is a slightly shallower depth, so you can get it on 100 by 100 trunking rather than the 150. Now that makes a difference in cost because 150 by 150 PVC trunking is incredibly expensive, and also just the size of the trunking that you're running. You can adequately get all of your cables in 100 by 100 trunking. It looks nicer, it fits better. That is another good change. Off the bottom of that, we've got these two Proteus boards. Now these are three-phase. Proteus have a huge range of three-phase boards, and the versatility in that has allowed us to fit these very neatly in here to carry out some of the changes we needed to make to integrate the wider kit and also supply the existing house loads. So there wasn't enough space to get the horizontal boards in with 3-phase and then stack them. So we've gone for these 2 small 2-way TPM boards, and we've got 4-pole main isolator switches on them. This one is for the mains, so we bring our mains back up from the gateway above into this main switch. It then loops out into these 3 100 amp connector blocks, the DIN rail mounted, and that is to feed a phase to each of the single phase consumer units in this installation. There is one in the garage, one for the swimming pool, and one for the house loads, and they're all in different locations. So we've taken them over to a central isolation point I'll show you, and then they're wired out to those boards from tails. As they were already, we've just adapted the gateway in line with that circuit. We've also popped in our 3-phase EV charger. So if we didn't have the 3-phase EV charger, we wouldn't have needed to necessarily do this. We could have gone straight from the backup port to our isolation point with the existing consumer units splitter box that's already in place and wired it like that. But because there was nowhere to take power for the 3-phase charger existing, this was a nice solution. So we've gone for that. And there is plans with this customer to swap their consumer units to 3-phase distribution boards. They've just acquired the property and they're looking at doing that. So this can perhaps be tweaked at that stage if needed. It doesn't need to be, but it could be. Down in the bottom board, we've got our circuits for the solar inverters. So we've got the house solar and the garage solar. The pool solar is coming through via the 3rd phase, but it's coming on a sub-main that's also carrying other loads. So we've had to meter that separately rather than through the smart port. But this gives options to connect in further PV generation, and it's measured as a cumulative. In the app, you can actually see which each phase is producing. So if you want to know what one phase is doing from the other, you can have access to that information in the app. And again, 4-pole isolator, these are just blanks, spare ways, so the smart port can add other generation through it into that board. We kept them as 2 separate boards just because they are essentially 2 separate supplies, if you like, for different uses in different states, and that seemed like the nicest way to do it. Now, there is other electrical work going on in here. We're not doing it. There's a site electrician who is busy first fixing and doing his stuff. So we've got this temporary lead in here which is running our internet splitter. This is all going to be housed in a cupboard in the end. This room's getting renovated and adjusted and converted well. Walls are moving, ceilings have been changed about, and there is some further configuration taking place beyond our control. So we've just got this set as is for now. The customer's not actually going to be using this system for a few months yet. The battery storage side, while we're in this room, is an absolute monster. So these are full stacks of the battery 10s, 9 kilowatt hours per module. So you're looking at 54 kilowatt hours per stack. That gives 108 kilowatts combined, and each inverter on the top is 25 kilowatts. And you can see at the minute they're quite towards being full. So these are up there on the top of their sidebars and they're happily doing their thing. There is some solar generation taking place, so they are charging at the minute, and they'll make best use of that through the smart port to prevent it going out to the grid. The customer will still be getting paid for their feed-in tariff generation, and that all will be popped into here. There was some existing metering. I'll try and find a picture and pop it up somewhere in the video here if I remember, of how this was originally metered. It's your atypical DIN rail mid-metering, and the customer was finding it tricky to gather the readings for the feed-in tariff operator. So they requested a change to physical meters, and we've popped them up here. So it's now much easier when they need to read them. And you can see they've been in place for a day now, and one of the PV systems, I think they went on at like 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, has done 6 units and the other one around 3. And that sort of makes sense because one is 12 panels and one is 6 panels, so you would expect one to be twice the other. So that's an interesting observation, and we've now got those generating happily, whirling away, collecting meter readings for the customer to be paid and still receive their feed-in tariff. That's often a question we get asked when we're adding these systems with all the solar kit. Will I still receive that? Will it still work as normal? Absolutely. Yes, it will. These are essentially sat here as AC coupled inverters. They can have PV added to them if you subsequently want to fill more roof space and be kept separate from the fit system. You just need to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's on that when solar's in the mix. But just as a battery storage solution, still get paid for your fit, still enable you to use that energy later on in the day as it is stored up. We'll go and have a look at the existing consumer units and how that's all split apart, and there's 2 EV chargers on this one as well. As I said, we've got existing boards already. These are the 2 house boards. They're on the first phase, so L1, and they live up there. There is a breakout box in here that was existing, and I'll try and get a picture to show you what it was like. So there was 2 solar boards and meters in here as well, which we've removed in repositioning the solar meters. This box up here has a Henley block in it, which splits out to a big 25mm 4-core steel wire armour. That runs over to the garage and swimming pool, and that carries L2 and L3. The plan longer term is to utilise that as a 3-phase submain to pop a 3-phase board down in the garage and supply the pool and garage from that. At the minute, the loads aren't especially, the phases, aren't especially well balanced because the swimming pool is not currently in use, and the garage circuits are lightly loaded but carrying more current. You know, there's relatively small consumption in this property at the minute. The customer's adding heat pump ground source and also considering other things to change the way they heat their home, electric vehicles coming into the mix, which is why we've got this large battery system. But presently, there's not a lot there. So I think the longer term plan is the site electrician who's looking after the renovations in that room I've just showed you with the batteries in is going to be doing this upgrade work, and they're able to kind of wire this up as a 3-phase setup. So we'd have a 3-phase board in here, all this lot gets taken out, they get taken out, this gets blanked off, board up there, and you can then try and balance your loads through the 3 phases more effectively than is the current setup. But we do have a 60 amp switch fuse in here for the house boards on L1, and then 60 amp fuses going out to the garage for L2 and L3. And again, you know, it's not maximising the capacity of the system when it's set up like that either. So we've tried to future-proof that. We have got our submain, which is a 25mm 5-core steel wire armour coming over to here. That breaks apart in our trunking and wires down into this isolation point here. So we've tried to leave that long, considering it's going to come down into a 3-phase board, potentially as the input supply to that. So you just drop down, feed into the bottom of the board, and then, you know, you can go from there. All of these switch fuses can be taken out. Consumer unit, all the final circuit wiring's right there, so that can be taken in. It should be a nice job for someone to do, to be fair. The tails, we've just wired off the bottom of our main switch temporarily, back into these switch fuses. The neutral's subdivided from this Henley block here, so all of the final submains going off to these areas of the installation have their own line of neutrals for each circuit, and I guess that's because the original installers were worried about the neutral current due to the imbalance of the loads. We do have that consideration in our final cable running back to our gateway. However, it's 25mm and we've got a maximum 80 amp arrangement on the supply, and due to how this system's set up, we're not going to have an issue with that. So we're quite able to separate those neutrals here. But it is something to consider when you have got single phase circuits running on a 3-phase system, making sure your neutral isn't getting overstretched due to imbalanced loads, because that's what can and does happen. So we've got that all set up in there now. We've made as neat a job as we can. As I say, I've popped a picture of how it was. It looks infinitely better than it did. You can see the size of our cables coming down here. That in that earth block, that's our earth coming straight in off our submain from the gateway. So these are beefy, chunky cables running off to look after all of this down here. So down in the garage, we have got a SIGENERGY single-phase EV charge point, and that's because we've just had polyphase brought down here. So there is no 3-phase in the garage. However, there is a 3-phase cable here, and the plan is, at some point in the future, is these single-phase boards are going to be removed for a 3-phase board, and all of this subdivide a little bit better, just to try and balance up the phases, because they're quite out of balance through the way the solar's wired, and also the kind of unbalanced loads. So we've got swimming pool on one phase, we've got a garage and annex on another, and then the rest of the house all sat on the other phase. So there's, yeah, quite a lot of wonder there, and the battery system we've installed will help, you know, smooth that out in terms of the grid. But it'd be nice to have a better effort at making it all a bit more balanced and aligned internal to the installation. We have brought hardwired data down here. This is just run off to the router, which is just the other side of the building through there. And we've got a little managed switch here just to allow us internet connectivity for our EV charge point, and also the customer wanted the option of putting an access point in as well, which is why we haven't just taken that cable straight to the charger. It runs up and across over here and then down and into the charger. This is where the customer wanted it, so they can drive in and pop the vehicle straight onto charge. Again, the SIGENERGY one integrates with the system. So if you want, you can tell it to use the power within your house battery. There's a large battery bank here, so possibly you might want to. Or you can tell it to make use of the solar and prioritise which order all of that goes in, whether it's to the house battery, the vehicle first, or up to the grid first, whatever you want. It's all in your full control via the app. These are a little bit tricky in terms of getting used to getting the holsters in and out. It caught me out for a good while, but they kind of lift up and pull out, and you push it in towards the top and then down, and they lock in, he says, and then they're in there, don't come out. This is an indoor environment, so you could just leave it coiled up, hanging loose if you want, rather than in the holster anyway. There's a cap on there, so you could do that outdoors as well if you want to. But yeah, they are what they are. They integrate really well within the app. Makes it super easy for customers to get the system to do what they want in a simple and easy way. And as always, hardwiring the internet connectivity just gives that reliability. So our system here has got Ethernet, Wi-Fi and 4G dongles for comms. So we're giving it every best prospect of staying online. And at some point in the future, it won't be us, it's the electrician who's working here on the property at the minute actually, doing some upgrade work. They'll be swapping this for 3-phase and redoing all of this as well as additional circuits going in. You can see the old inverter up there as well, hiding away in the other. Quite why it was put up there when it could have very easily been put down here, I don't know, but I'm sure it made sense to the person who did it at the time. It's very awkward now. We swapped the meters out, so the customer did have solar meters like this that were tricky to get them to display the readings. So they've spoke to their fit owner, they've given permission for the meters to be swapped. So we've done that, and now they're a bit easier for them to read and submit readings for payment, because they have still got a fit tariff on the 3 solar arrays in here, 1 on each phase. So that's going to be useful for them going forward, and that's kind of the garage works here. We have got a 3-phase charger as well, which we're just waiting to turn up. It's the last little piece of the jigsaw, and if the guys get that done, I'll drop a little clip of that in following this. This is our 22 kilowatt EV charge point. This is untethered, and it gives us full control of where our energy is going. We can choose to send the exported solar PV power beyond the house loads to the vehicle, to the house battery, to the grid, even in preference to one or the other before we're making use of it as house loads as well. The SIGENERGY system gives you full control of where all of your energy is going. And of course, this will power out 22 kilowatts, 7 kilowatts per phase. So if you've got a car that's compatible with that, you can charge up much more quickly from the 3-phase energy. If you want to, you can empty your house battery into your vehicle, especially when you've got a size of battery storage that this customer now has. Most people don't want to be doing that, but it does give you the flexibility. And these are OCCP compatible, so if you want to rent your charger out, you can. They're also accessed by a RFID card if you need to, or by activation through the app, or you can just use them on free vend. And as I say, an untethered option here, 22 kilowatts, little light on the front. They are what they are. They do a great job of controlling how your vehicle charges and allowing access to the wider system. Integration of EV chargers from the same brands as your battery storage system is the best way to make your full use of your kit. I know people who've got existing EV chargers often feels like a waste to take something out that is working and functional. I totally get and understand that. However, it's very difficult to avoid the situation where your vehicle will sometimes discharge your house battery into itself, however hard we try to mitigate that through timed controls, through splitting service head apart so that it can't see one or the other. You know, in that case, you can't necessarily make full use of all of your exported PV power into a vehicle, for example. So it's well worth adopting the same kit. I hope you've enjoyed having a look through this system with us here today. It is an absolute beast. And as I said at the start of this video, if you're considering solar PV, battery storage and EV charge points for your home, please do get in touch with us. There'll be a link in the description. And if you've got existing feed-in tariff solar, adding battery storage is not going to affect your existing arrangements. You can still capture that energy and be paid for everything that you've produced, and all will remain the same on that front. It can be a real power play of getting the last bit of value from your feed-in tariff setup. Most people are entering into the last sort of 10 years of those now, and battery storage can play a good part in being able to make a maximum use of that. Thank you to our customers on this project, and thank you to Matty and Nathan as always for producing some incredible work. They've done a great job here lugging these batteries through the customer's premises. It was a long old stretch and they've done a cracking effort at getting this set up and online. It's working an absolute treat. Everything is running as we would want it to. The commission process, we did have a slight issue for the installers out there where one of the stacks turned to an off state at the end and it hadn't actually completed its software update for some reason or other. So we managed to force the software update to go back through and that resolved that problem. So if you're running for an issue like that yourselves where there's a couple of stacks together, check the software. We've been with technical support, it's been referred to R&D and they were looking at it, but we managed to sort it out ourselves in the end. This is a cracking system and we're really proud of it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Share your tips and ideas. If you're a customer who's thinking about this and you're considering what you need and you've got a question, drop them in there as well. I try and answer every single one where I can. Some of them slip through the net, unfortunately, so do bear with me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed watching this and go along and have a look at some other systems we've installed. There's plenty of examples on there now. We're trying to be transparent and show exactly what we do week to week and day to day, so customers can make an informed choice on who they're choosing to fit their system. Thank you for watching and we'll see you on the next one.